Hi, I'm Abby Paige Stevens here at Stitchin Heaven, and this is Stitchin' with Abby. I am here to share with you all of the latest and greatest projects that we have coming for you here at Stitchin Heaven. Today I have an extra special project to share with you. This is one that's very personal to me, and I'm excited to share it with you. We have for you the Rainbow Baby Quilt. Come on and let's get stitching. Hi there, thanks for joining me again as we learn how to put together the Rainbow Baby Quilt. I do want to let you know that here in the shop we will have pre-cut laser cut tradition kits available for you. Our laser cut tradition kits are awesome because every single piece in here for the quilt is pre-cut. It's laser cut, and I'm going to open this up and show you what they look like. The pattern will also be available separately, and instructions are written for cutting them yourselves. But the advantage of the laser cut tradition kit is our triangles are all pre-cut with engineered corners. And so I'll show you as I'm piecing these together how all of these little clip corners come together really quick and easy. So it's a really, really fun project to make. So I'm going to set this kit aside for a moment, and we'll get started with the basic block. The basic building block of this quilt is the Ohio star block, which is a very traditional, basic, easy star that we've used here. The only tricky part about this quilt is making sure that we orient our quarter square triangles correctly. And so you can see here on the pieces I've laid out for a blue block that within each block you will have a background fabric, and then you will have what we call a light color and a dark color. So you'll have a light red and a dark red, a light orange and a dark orange. So when we build this, we're going to have a light colored square in the center, and then we're going to have the dark colored triangles surrounding that so that we get this kind of square on a square on point within the star. And then we have our light colored triangles creating the star points within the block. So when you put these together, when you get started on your quarter square triangles, you are going to want to make sure that when you piece these together that you sew in the right place. I can tell you, when I was putting together the samples for this, I sewed a few of them the wrong way, and I opened up my triangle, like I went like this. And instead of sewing here, I didn't pay attention and I sewed here. And so then when I opened it up, it was now the wrong orientation to fit correctly within the star. So that's going to be my number one tip for you, is just make sure that you lay this all out. And when you take your pieces to the sewing machine, make sure that you're sewing on the right side. Another tip that I have for you is, because we're sewing all of these triangle pieces together, I don't know if this has happened to you. I'm sure it has. I know it's happened to me many times. But when you're sewing along, this is the stitch plate for my machine here, and you can see that it's got this wide slit. And if you've ever tried to sew triangles or anything with a point, and you start to send it in there, that point goes and gets sucked down into that little slot. So on my machine, if this is an option for you, I have a Bernina 590 here that I'm working on today, and we actually have a different stitch plate that we can put on there. This just has a single hole right there that the needle goes up and down. So these slots here are where the feed dogs come up into. So all I've got is this little hole right here, and so it's difficult for all that fabric to slide into there, and it just makes it so my fabric just glides right along the top and doesn't get sucked in, and it has helped a whole ton. As I was saying, we want to make sure that we orient our pieces correctly as we sew them together. So I'm going to take this to machine and I'm going to stitch here. And then I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to stitch here. All right, so here I've got my pieces stitched together. Before I press, I'm going to do a double check, make sure everything's oriented correctly here. And when I press these, I'm going to press to the dark side. That way, when they come together, they're on opposite sides, and so those seams are going to oppose each other and we'll be able to nest nicely. I'm going to take those and give them a quick press at the pressing mat. So the next step will be to sew these units together. And I'm going to get that seam to lock in with the other piece. And I'm going to make sure that all of my little clipped corners here are lined up, just so. Okay, so there we've got the first unit. I'm going to repeat those same steps for the other 3/4 square triangles. All right, so here I've got my 1/4 square triangles all done. And there they are, and again, because we had these engineered corners, I don't have any little dog ears I need to clip off. So now we're going to begin to assemble our rows. So we will sew those together here, here, and here. All right, so I've got those sewn on. I am going to, when these get pressed, I'm going to press towards the solid square. Then that way we'll have a seam going this way, a seam going that way, and a seam going that way. And again, they will nest nicely. Oh, we do want to make sure, again, that we've got the dark version of our color surrounding the center block. And now I will put the other side on to complete the rows. And I will stitch down those edges. All right, so there I've got all of my rows assembled. I'm going to take them over to the pressing mat and get those pressed out. All right, now we're ready to assemble our rows. So I will turn this unit over. I can feel those seams nest together, so I am not going to bother with pins, but if that is helpful to you, please certainly feel free to put a pin in there to make sure that those stay lined up. And there we have a completed star. I'm going to go press that out. These seams I am going to press open because there's not really one direction that's better than the other, and so I'm just going to go ahead and press open to reduce bulk in the seams. And there we have our completed Ohio star block. So you are going to make 2 of each color plus, so that will be 12 total stars, red, blue, orange, green, blue, purple. And then you're going to make a 13th block, which will go in the star. And it's a little bit different. We've used, in order to coordinate with the yellow in the balloon, you'll be using a lighter version of yellow for the background for this star. Once we have our stars all made, let's work on assembling this half of the quilt. So I already have much of this pre-assembled, and so I've gotten it this far, but let me show you how we put together the rows. So I have left off the very top row here, and I've left off the bottom row down here. For the very top row, you'll notice here at the end of each row we need a triangle so that we get this diagonal across the quilt. And so here on the top, this will be my, pull that down so you can see. That will be my final block there. And we're going to sew a triangle. Again, this piece will be pre-cut for you in your quilt kit. So we need to sew those together. So I'm just going to flip that over. These ones, the corners are not clipped off, and that's for a reason. So you do want to make sure that this is overhanging. It's not meant to line up. It is going to overhang. You'll get a dog ear, and that's what allows us to have our 1/4 inch seam. Let's see if I can find a spot where you can see. That's what allows us to have our 1/4 inch seam here when they cross over each other. So let me get that put together, and I will be back. All right, so there I've got that sewn on. If you use a precise 1/4 inch seam, your points will come out nicely. And I am going to press this so that the seam is out towards the large triangle. Give that a press. Okay, so there's my top row completed. I'm going to set this aside for just a little bit. And now I need to finish my bottom row. So on the bottom row, you'll know that this one actually ends, get this out from behind that plant, it ends with a square corner. So we do not need a triangle on that end. So I'm just going to assemble my blue, green, and orange with their background squares. So here's my blue background square, green background square, slide those down, orange, and our final background square over here. So I'm just going to assemble all of those into a row. All right, so here I have my final row, and we're going to add that onto. Make sure I've got this going the right way. The bottom of the quilt. And then I also will have the top row to add. Oh, you still can't see that. There we go. We'll add the top row to the top of the quilt. So because we press toward our solid squares and the solid triangles, those seams should nest nicely for you. And again, you're going to have a little bit of a dog ear hanging off here so that when you fold this back, your edges will line up. All right, I've got that top square on. I haven't quite pressed yet. I want to get that bottom row on before I go over to the pressing mat. I got that last row on, and I am going to go press those out. These rows I am going to press open because, again, there's not really a convenient way one way or the other to reduce any bulk, so I feel like the best option is to press open. All right, so here we have the completed, I'm going to call this the star in the field half. And the next thing we need to do is put together our balloon block. All right, so I already had my star made for the center of the balloon. And we are going to start by putting a frame around it. And so within your kit, you'll have pieces, they are labeled. And we are going to start with the dark blue E. I'm going to peel that sticker off and set it aside. And those will go on the sides first. And then we will be using dark blue F to sew across the top and bottom. These are fairly narrow pieces, and so we want to make sure that when we're doing this that we're using our 1/4 inch seam and making sure that we're being as precise as possible. So here I've got my frames on my block, and now we need to put together these rows of triangles that go on the top and bottom to create our balloon shape. So we do that by combining our dark yellow C pieces and our light blue C pieces. These are both labeled C because they're the same shape, and then they're differentiated by color. So we will start with three of the dark yellow triangles upside down. And then we will fill in with a light blue triangle in between. And so we're going to do 2 rows for the bottom side of the balloon. So one row will have 3 and 2, and then the next row will have 2 yellow and 1 blue. And then at the top of the balloon, we will have, again, 3 yellows and 2 blues. All of these triangles have the engineered corners, so when you go to piece them together, you can see that all of those edges line up with each other. It makes it quick and easy, and you know that you're being accurate. Once you get these sewn together, you are going to press toward the dark yellow on each piece. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these rows sewn together, and then we'll go on to the next step of assembling the rest of the balloon. Okay, so here we have our rows put together, and this will go in the center. And then we have our dark yellow D pieces. That will fill in each side. So I will sew stitch there, and I'll stitch there first, and then once that's pressed open, then I will add the rows all on. So let's get to that point. All right, as I was sewing my side pieces on here, I remembered that we need to go back a step here. So that's fine where we are. So we need to get our background triangles that go in here to square up the balloon block. So we do that with, we have light background K. We'll go down here, and we have light background N, which will go up here. So I'm going to first sew these 2 rows together, and then once that's together and pressed open, then these triangles will fit, and then I'm going to get these sewn on there to complete these 2 rows. Once all of the rows are assembled, then we assemble the entire block. So here is the main body of the balloon, and now we need to add the basket to the bottom. So we are going to use light background M and brown H. There are 2 of those. And those get sewn on each side. Once you have those sewn on, then we add brown G, which is the basket. Now that I have my basket sewn on, I can now add my light background L. There's 2 of those. And those will go on each side. Now that that portion is completed, I can add the basket to the balloon. So there we have it. We have our completed balloon block. It looks like that. I just think it's cheerful and helps give a good memory to something that is difficult to deal with. So once we have our balloon block done, now we have a couple of large triangles that we need to fill in the background here. So those will be pre-cut for you as well. So here we have a light background I and a light background J. So those will go with the larger one, I. Let's see if we can figure out which way this goes. Is going to go like this. Let's pull this down so you can see. Is going to go on like this. Again, we're going to have a dog ear sticking out down here. So we're going to line up our top square edge, and then we'll have a dog ear down here. So I'm going to sew that on, and once that's on, I'm going to sew the background J triangle down here with my square edges lined here, and again a dog ear pointing out here to complete this diagonal that goes through the center of the quilt. As I'm pressing this, normally I prefer to press to the dark side, but just because of where the seams are lying, to reduce the bulk, I'm actually going to press towards the background fabric, which really, once you get the batting in there, it's not as noticeable anyways. So there we have that half of the quilt put together. And now all that's left is to join the balloon half with the field half. And it's just one long seam to join those together. So I'll get that done and I will be right back. All right, and here we have it, the complete top. All that's left to do is to add your border. So there will be a small red border and then a green border, and finish with your binding. I am so pleased that you were able to come and join with me today as we put this quilt together. It's a special, very, very special project that I really enjoyed designing. It was therapeutic for me, helped me to remember some things and remember my daughter. It's been many years since she's passed, and so it's been nice to be able to focus time on her as well. I hope that you will hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can keep up on all that's happening here at Stitchin Heaven, and I will see you next time. Bye.